everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is November 26, 2021. Thank you so much for joining me to discover the truth beneath the surface. I'm driving around here on a rainy morning and drinking my coffee and looking through the news. I was just checking Telegram and decided I would come on and share some thoughts. So thank you for joining me. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. Hopefully you didn't have too difficult a time dealing with your crazy relatives as I did. And that, of course, is going to continue for me today. I have another family gathering, so wish me luck as I deal with the wall of ignorance that is otherwise known as my family when it comes to politics and when it comes to understanding what's going on in the world. Sad but true, folks. I love them dearly. I've tried to wake them up time and time again. And no matter what I do, they don't listen. They've taken everything that I've said and pretty much thrown it overboard. And not only that, for the most part, they believe that everything that I believe and everything that I stand for is just completely ludicrous. And so it's difficult. Holidays, I have to be honest with you, are difficult for me. Spending time, long periods of time with family at this point in my life, and you could probably relate to this, I'm sure, it's difficult because of the overall situation that we find ourselves. I mean, I talk about this on a daily basis, the fact that we're involved in a war, the fact that we're completely at odds with our friends and neighbors over the simple reality, over this idea that we're at war. People can't even accept that. People don't even know what's at stake. They don't even understand what they're living through. And the more I become aware of it, the more I learn about it, and my consciousness changes and shifts as a result of not only the knowledge that I'm receiving, but the connections that I'm making with like-minded people. It's getting harder and harder for me to exist in the world as I've always known it. And I'm sure, and I know that folks out there can identify with this. I've had a lot of people share similar thoughts with me that as time goes by, it gets really difficult to maintain their traditional relationships and roles within their family, within their life. I was talking yesterday about my difficulty in continuing to conform to things that in the beginning I conformed to because I really didn't understand fully what was going on. But as time goes on and the situation gets more and more dire and the situation progresses, we learn more, and it becomes more difficult for us to conform. And I think that's the entire point, obviously, of this great awakening, of this entire process. The whole idea is to get us to a point, to this precipice, this jumping off point where we finally put our foot down and we finally learn to say no again. And so much of my commentary yesterday was focused on this topic of overcoming the fear of consequences and just simply learning to say no and accepting whatever consequences the system wants to throw at you in a temporary sense, because I truly believe that we're in the final phases of this tyranny. But we have to be willing to accept whatever consequences they throw at us and believe that ultimately God has his hand on us and he will provide for us. And when one door closes, another door opens. And I truly believe, and I'm going through this process, by the way, in my own life. So I'm not just up here preaching to people and not practicing what I preach, because I'm going through this, as I say, and it's not easy. I have to be honest with you. But taking a stand for what you believe in is never easy. I don't think anybody would ever claim that having the courage of your convictions doesn't require courage. That's why the phrase goes the way it does, right? You have to be willing to go through periods of uncertainty. And in most cases, and certainly in my case, you have to be willing to have everybody around you think that you're a fool, think that you're crazy, to criticize everything that you do. I mean, I've shared with certain folks that I've become close with on this journey certain details about my life that I don't necessarily talk about on my podcast, I've gotten close with certain people and shared certain things. And the things that I've shared and expressed to people, they've responded by saying that they're proud of me for making certain decisions, for taking certain stands. And I have to be honest with you, when I hear that from people that I haven't even actually met before, I haven't even been in the same room with before, it really is overwhelming to me, because honestly, what I feel most of the time, 99.9% of the time, when it comes to this arena of my life, and really, of course, this is kind of taken over life itself. It's hard to separate politics from life anymore the way you used to. Everything that I do, I'm made to feel by the people around me that they're embarrassed and ashamed for taking the stands that I take, for making the decisions that I make. And it's not easy. I mean, I know that I'm doing the right thing, but let's be honest. I mean, it's not easy when everybody around you doesn't make you feel as if you're doing the right thing, and in fact makes you feel as if you're doing the wrong thing. But to hear from people in this audience the exact opposite, and to have that positive reinforcement, for me is a big deal, because like I say, I mean, I have to battle against and do the right thing despite being made to feel like I'm insane and I'm crazy. And even really at certain points kind of goes beyond that. You know, I mean, when it comes to the issue of my job, when it comes to my livelihood and such, people get really, really cruel and nasty when it comes to these types of situations, because they just simply don't think that anything is more important than your job. They don't believe that. I mean, that's, you can always tell. I mean, if you ask a person that, these same people that, they wouldn't admit it, but you can always tell what a person believes based upon what they do. The old adage, actions speak louder than words. You can always tell what's inside of a person's heart, really, based upon their actions. And most people out there who have gone the route of getting the thing in their arm and conforming to the system, they've done so because they view their life and their job and their house and their existence within this matrix, to them, anything that would threaten that on a financial level, because I think that's really ultimately what it comes down to for most people. The conformity really comes down to a fear of being affected negatively on an economic level. And I think that people reveal what their true priorities and what their true values are in situations like these. And I've talked a lot about this. I really believe that God has shaped this entire scenario. He's allowed this epic struggle within our society worldwide to unfold this way, so that everything would be revealed. In the end, everything gets revealed. People's real identity, their real value system, what they ultimately stand for or don't, is being revealed right now. And I think that in and of itself is truly epic. I mean, when before in history have we ever seen a time, a circumstance unfold where people have to reveal their true character, whether they want to or not, based upon their choices? Based upon their free will, they're making choices and they're revealing who they really are. And God is making that happen. And I do believe that I don't believe that that's ever really happened before. That what we're witnessing is truly, truly epic. And it's also, to be honest with you, in my case, and I'm sure in yours as well, it's disappointing on a lot of different levels, because we're realizing that so much of what we believed in, so much of what we had faith in, so much of what we respected or what we thought we respected in other people, or what we thought we identified in other people as things to respect, turns out that the opposite is true. And that's becoming more and more apparent. It's very, very difficult to go through that. And that's all just something that that's something that all of us, I think, are going through. And yet at the same time, we've also got this chaos in some sense within the Patriot community. And I've touched upon this, and I think there's just so much controversy and so much drama right now, particularly regarding Lin Wood and his continued battles, I guess you could say, with other patriots, Sidney Powell and now General Flynn. And a lot of folks have asked me, what's my 2 cents on this? And I have to be honest, I'm still trying to figure out the different angles here. And I always approach a situation like this. I look at it from every possible angle, regardless of whether or not it's a popular one, in order to try to figure out what I think is actually going on. Now, I think that Lin Wood, I've always had a positive gut reaction when I listen to Lin Wood. I always feel intuitively like he's a good man, like he's a patriot. And I have to say, at the same time, when I listen to General Flynn, I feel the same way. When I listen to Sidney Powell, I feel the same way. And so a lot of these, patriots, that people that are patriots, in my view, that are pitted against one another. And Lin Wood, of course, has been at the center, really, of so much controversy throughout this entire process. And it definitely makes me feel as if some sort of choreographing is going on here. That this drama that we're witnessing right now isn't necessarily completely organic. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about infiltration in the Patriot movement. And, Lin Wood has gone after people like Dan Bongino. He's gone after, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And he's made a lot of statements, a lot of very controversial statements. And Lin Wood he really is. He's just like a big batch of firecrackers going off. I mean, every time he talks and he speaks, people listen. But he's also very, very blunt. He's very, very honest. And that's very controversial. And it gets people's attention. But it makes me wonder, like I said, if some sort of acting isn't going on here. Because we could sit here all day long and we could dissect everybody's background, all of these commentators out there, and we could try to figure out who's telling the truth about who. I ultimately believe that all of this is going to come out in the wash in the end. And that perhaps some of this drama with Lin Wood is being orchestrated by the White Hats in order to expose certain people who are posing as patriots. Now, I'm not prepared at this point to make a judgment on anyone, really, who is in question right now, because I really haven't done enough research and come to a conclusion yet of what I really think is going on here. But I definitely do believe that there are a lot of plants within the Patriot community. And I do believe that a lot of it is really just, classic controlled opposition, deep plants within the Patriot community. I mean, it's naive to think that the cabal didn't see this situation, this entire revolution amongst the people happening, and put their people in certain places of influence. I think it's very naive to believe that. And so, who are these people really is the question. Now, there are people, a lot of folks out there, and this ties into the Rittenhouse case as well. There are a lot of folks out there who are questioning Lin Wood. And, now people are pointing out, well, he's got, he was a Democrat at one point, and in his background, he gave to Democrats and things like that. All criticisms that I've heard about Lin Wood. And ultimately, I've really just written those off as basically that people's politics and their ideology, it evolves over time as they wake up. And clearly, Lin Wood, when you listen to the guy talk, he knows what's going on. He's spot on with his analysis of this election fraud and so many other issues related to the cabal. He tells the truth. And so, when I listen to him, like I say, I always have a positive gut reaction to Lin Wood. Now, is it possible that Lin Wood is one of these deep state cabal plants that's there to ultimately throw firecrackers, into this Patriot movement and to stir people up and to cause disunity? Because a lot of people are out there criticizing Lin Wood. And by the way, I'm not going to start throwing around names or, different podcasters or anybody. I'm not going to put anyone out there, but a lot of folks that I listen to, a lot of Telegram channels that I typically share articles on and so forth, are very critical right now of Lin Wood and asking these types of questions. Now, why is there constant controversy surrounding this guy? And why does it seem often to be controversy that ends up causing chaos and disunity within the Patriot movement? And with this situation, like I said, there's so many different possibilities in this fog of war that we're living through right now that you have to consider all possibilities. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? I've always believed that Lin Wood is a good guy. I have to acknowledge that, yes, he certainly causes a lot of controversy. Making statements about General Flynn, reciting an occultic prayer. He had to know clearly that General Flynn is a beloved figure within the Patriot community, and to make these types of statements and to really double and triple down on them. Now, Lin Wood's a smart guy. He knows what type of hornet's nest he's kicking there. So is he doing this on purpose toward some sort of nefarious end to cause chaos within the Patriot community at a time where we really need unity? Because I think that's the frustration of a lot of people. We don't really necessarily know what's going on. I think most people really don't. We don't really know who's who at this point. But the one thing we know is that we need unity right now. And it seems as if when Lin Wood makes these types of statements that it's causing the opposite. So it makes folks wonder who he really is and what he's really doing. But on the other end of the spectrum, again, is the people, the love and the trust that people have for Lin Wood based upon his authenticity, which I ultimately am sold on. I think that whoever is playing, some of these folks out there, whether it's Lin Wood or whether it's other people, are amazing, amazing actors if it turns out that they're not really who they say they are. Because, if you look at a guy like Lin Wood and you listen to him speak, his authenticity, to me, I've never questioned it. And if it turned out that he actually is playing a role and he's not a good guy, or even if he is a good guy and he's playing a role, and so many of the things that I think I understand about him turned out to not be true, I would absolutely be stunned. And I think that's probably going to be the case. I think by the time all of this situation unfolds, we're going to figure out who's who. And there's going to be a lot of folks out there who are very, very surprised. And I think that some of the people right now that we believe to be villains are just the opposite, and vice versa. Some of the people that we may think are heroes could end up, and I think likely will end up, being exposed as cabal plants, as deep state operatives. And maybe this chaos right now, this drama, is aimed at doing that. Now, it could be any type of scenario. It could be the white hats that are spearheading this thing, using Lin Wood towards specific ends. It could just be to create more fog of war. I don't know, but it's hard for me to imagine that at this stage of the game, when the White Hats are aware of the waning patience of the Patriots, that they're going to introduce more chaos and more disunity into the Patriot movement at a time when we need unity the most. That's hard for me to wrap my brain around. If this is a white hat move, and if it's somehow tied in to the Rittenhouse case. And like I say, more and more information keeps surfacing on that. The circumstances, the details, the emotional reaction that I had watching him accept the verdict or listen to the verdict and, collapsing and everything else. When I watched that in real time, I have to be honest, I had a deeply emotional response to it. And, it brought me to tears. I'm not going to suggest anything other than the reality of what happened. That's the truth. But I have to tell folks there's more to the story because, at least for me anyway, I've gone back and I've watched the video a few times, more than a few times really, of him standing there. And it almost looks as if, and once you take the emotional aspect out of it, the emotional charge that we all felt in that climactic moment, this drama that had really built up to this climactic moment. If you go back and you watch the video and you take that element out of it, the emotional charge, it almost looks as if, he's collapsing there. It almost looks like it was choreographed. Now, that could just be me, but that's just, in watching him, get that final not guilty read off, and then he just immediately just collapses to the ground and goes into, if you look at it through the lens of a crisis actor, of someone who could at least potentially be a crisis actor, and I think that more and more people at this point, I think the needle has moved on opinion within the Patriot community. I think when I first talked about this, like I said, I took a lot of heat, and I'm willing to do that. I think that anybody out there who's really after the truth, and especially people who are doing a podcast like myself, you've got to be willing to hit the barbed wire sometimes. But now I think everyone is really willing to say, wait a second, something doesn't seem right about this. Something about this case just, I don't know. And if you go back and you watch that video, it almost does look as if this is all planned and choreographed. Now, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was completely organic. But I find it a little bit strange that right off the bat, he starts with the interviews. He starts with Tucker Carlson. And then he starts, bad-mouthing Lynn Wood. All of it, to me, seems like it's choreographed. It all seems like it's tied in somehow. Now, what is the ultimate goal? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What's the ultimate objective? Who's really pulling the strings here? Now, if I had to guess, I'd probably say that if you look at the entire picture and the verdict and everything else, it's possible, as a lot of people have suggested, that it could be a false flag that was ultimately driven by the White Hats. Now, I don't know. I really don't know, but I have to be honest with people that I'm really in the camp with most of you. I'm at the point now where if this was a false flag and the White Hats did run this false flag on us, on all of us, the public, this Rittenhouse thing, I really share the frustration that a lot of folks out there have, that they've expressed with me, that, we're tired of living in this world of constant deception. And I understand that we're still involved in a war. And I understand that the art of war and all the rules, all the things that we've talked about, all the tactics and principles are still at play. I get it. But I also understand everybody's frustration that we're tired of not being able to take anything at face value. And if it turns out that this Rittenhouse situation was a white hat op, okay, if that ultimately needed to happen and it needed to unfold that way, and we find out more information, we ultimately get at the truth, And perhaps we'll see it in a different way. But at this stage in the game, I think that given how tired everybody is of all the propaganda, of all the false flags, of all the deception, the idea, the concept, the notion that it could be coming from the good guys, I think is pushing a lot of folks over the edge. I'm just saying, they've just had it. People have just had it. And I have to include myself in that camp of folks. Does that mean that I'm giving up on anything or giving up on the plan or losing faith? Absolutely not. Of course not. But I have that same frustration. But my gut is telling me that all of this Rittenhouse situation, Linwood, all the drama within the Patriot community, it seems like it's way too coordinated for it to be an accident. And I'm over here trying to figure out, what is the ultimate end game in all this? Because to me, it would seem as if this is a point when patriots everywhere should be closing ranks. We should be putting differences aside. We should not be causing drama within our own army, more or less. But then when I think about that, and I think about the effect that this is having, it seems like an effect that would benefit the enemy. So that kind of gets me wondering. Is this a black hat infiltration operation? Is there something going on from the other side here? And it's a very complex scenario that I wish I could give folks some sort of conclusive answer on, because I don't really have it at this point. But in looking at the entirety of the situation, I think it really comes down again to intuitively. What do you believe? Intuitively, what do you trust? And for me, I believe, as I've been continually stating, that what everybody right now should be doing, what everybody should be focusing on, is the Maxwell case. And I've been continually saying that as this case progresses, as more information comes out, there's going to be more and more distractions. There are going to be more and more false flags, really. And I just believe that ultimately we have to keep our eyes focused on that case and what comes out of that case, and not be distracted by everything that's going on around us. And it's very complex. It's very difficult, because I do believe that in the end, there are so many good patriots out there. There's so many wonderful people, so many great salt of the earth patriots, and people just want to know who they can trust. They want to know who they can believe in. Now, all of us, we trust and believe in God, and that faith is the cornerstone of what keeps us grounded and centered and what keeps us moving forward. But there's no escaping the fact that we're tired and we are worn out by this psychological war that's going on and raging all around us. And I still believe that we're getting to a point, we're very, very close to a tipping point. And I still believe that it's anybody's question, anybody's guess at this point, how it's going to go, how it's going to tip, in what direction. And yes, we're still waiting on this overt white hat action. Now, Simon Parks talked about it. There have been other insiders who have alluded to the white hats deciding that they were going to start to change their tactics. And yes, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of events that are happening behind the scenes. I'm not denying that. But what I'm talking about is we haven't seen the overt action that we've really been expecting yet. Juan O'Savin has talked about being very, very close to this marker. Now, there have been a lot of talk about different markers that, perhaps Rittenhouse was a marker. People are speculating all over the place, but Juan certainly pointed out that we're very, very close to a marker that's going to be undeniable. But let's face it, we haven't seen it yet. And I think with every passing day, when we don't see it, people, their patience, their frustration, all of these things, they become more and more intense. They start to lose patience. All of their frustration mounts with every passing day. And we're trying to balance out our understanding that things have to unfold the way that they have to unfold with the increasing stress and pain and anger and frustration and rage that we're feeling against this crooked system. And that's putting it mildly. We want to see action. And I've been hearing from a lot of people around the country who are connected to militia groups, and there are a lot of folks out there who are getting very, very close to really just being done with any kind of restraint. And I think that that's a dangerous situation, as I've talked about. And I'm not advocating for that, but I'm just simply reporting on, the things that I've heard, the chatter that I've heard amongst different groups out there coming from different people, that, people are getting very, very close now to reaching that tipping point on their own and no longer waiting to see what's going to unfold, but actually taking matters into their own hands. And I think that we have to be very sober-minded about that. We have to be very clear in our understanding that this is something that's at play. This is a variable here. I remember months ago hearing Gene Decode talk about this as well, that at a certain point, the Patriots were going to lose patience. And I honestly believe that Gene, as well as probably others out there, didn't expect that it was going to go on as long as it has, because in terms of their estimations of timelines that, months ago, didn't seem as if they were thinking that it was going to go this long. And I bet you that in reality, I don't know, of course, but I don't think that Gene or Juan or anybody else that we listen to knows the specifics of how things are going to unfold. I think they have certain great intel. But I think even these guys were probably surprised at how long this has gone on. And even they have had to learn along the way and adjust their expectations along the way. I think we're all, in a sense, in that same boat. But Gene has talked about at a certain point, people are going to lose their patience. And I don't even think it's really so much a question of losing. I think it is a question of losing your patience on the one hand, but I feel as if it's the infringement on people's freedoms, the infringement on their rights, the infringement on their literal ability to earn a living or to breathe or to say no to some poison. I mean, this is getting more and more intense. It's getting more and more real for people with every passing day. And as we get to that point, every person out there is feeling it more and more intensely and is reaching their own personal precipice of destruction, where they feel as if they just simply cannot go on living in this false system anymore. They can't go on complying and saying yes to things that they know to be fundamentally wrong. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, are we going to continue to comply and to say yes when we know something is wrong? So that we can, well, basically, for whatever reasons we have, for whatever our own personal reasons are, that are usually rooted in fear, and most often in fear of the unknown, because we've been conditioned to think that, if we have to disrupt our lives, that it's the worst possible thing that could happen to us. Never mind, losing our free will, losing our ability to say no, losing our rights. All those things don't really matter. It's the job that matters. It's the house that matters. And look, I've stated many times, I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to have to sell my house. I don't want to have to go through any of these things because, yes, I'm human. There's a part of me that's, that does fear the unknown and would rather keep things as I know them. Because I've been conditioned to think that way. And I also believe that there's part of human nature. That's just the way we are. Once we're settled, we don't want to get unsettled. But sometimes in life requires you to become unsettled. Life requires you to go through a period where things are up in the air, where things are confusing, where things are a little bit scary, maybe more than a little bit scary, where you have to go through and navigate through these storms. If you're on a righteous path, that's what's required of you. If you decide that you're just going to cave and you're just going to do what you're told, no matter how draconian it gets, no matter how ludicrous it gets, no matter how much infringement there is on your liberty, you decide you're going to go that route and go along to get along, well, you're going to do that into your grave. I mean, they've made it very, very clear. How many mainstream articles do you need to see admitting that, they're changing the definition of what it means to be fully you-know-whatted, thing that goes in your arm? They're adding boosters all the time. They're adding more and more requirements. They made it very, very clear, folks. I do believe it's all pantomime. But again, this was always their objective. They made it very clear. They want to depopulate. And that means they want you dead. And so this is the reality. This is the reality that we're living through. But I believe that the Almighty is ultimately guiding this entire process. And I think that as we progress and as things get more and more confusing, and as people are really getting more and more desperate to find faith and to hang on, I think it's important that we all remember the core of our faith is always rooted in God and God taking action on behalf of his people. And I think that all of us believe that that's exactly what's going to happen. We just don't know how it's going to unfold. But we can't confuse those two things. We can't confuse not knowing how it's going to unfold with knowing that it will, ultimately. And we just have to be prepared for the drama. We have to be prepared for the confusion. We have to be willing to toss aside certain issues and realize that they're distractions. I think that's the difficult thing that so many people are facing right now. Because there's so much information out there. People, good-hearted people who just want to know the truth, they just gravitate toward the information and they're trying to sift through it and make sense of it because they want to know what's going on. But I think what's hard for a lot of folks out there is scrolling back and realizing with all of the information out there that they have to be aware that a lot of this information is out there as disinformation, as propaganda, as theater. But so much of what we're witnessing is theater. And we also have to remember that a lot of this theater is geared at least from the white hat perspective, the propaganda and the lies and deception that they're putting out there is geared at deceiving not just us, but the enemy. I mean, is it possible that all the people that we've mentioned today, I mean, Lynn Wood and General Flynn and Sidney Powell and Dan Bongino, I mean, is it possible that all these people are really good patriots as we believe them to be, and they're all working together to create this drama and confusion as a tactic to deceive the enemy? It's definitely possible. That's what I'm saying. Anything is possible at this point. And I think that we have to just learn to accept that this type of deception, this type of fog of war, these tactics, they're not just to deceive us and to degrade our morale. They're also to deceive the enemy. And I do believe that this war does continue. There are still elements of evil out there that are still contending with the white hats. I firmly believe that. And I'm very actually anxious to get an update from Gene, who I'm going to be, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, I'm going to be talking to Gene this coming week. And I'm very curious to get his assessment in terms of where we are in this war and how close we are to seeing the tipping point that we've been talking about and we've been waiting for. So hopefully folks enjoyed this coffee chat this morning. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow, and I will talk to everybody real soon. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you. Do everything you can to support my work and to support the channel. Make sure you subscribe to all of my different platforms. Again, I'm on BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, and Podbean. I'll be back soon. Thank you for all your support and love. Patriot out.